Chapter 2 of Bunyip Land. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Lucy Burgoyne. Bunyip Land by George Manville Fenn. Chapter 2. How we prepared to start and started. You will have gathered from all this that my father had been missing for pretty well 3 years, and that he, a well-known botanist, had accepted a commission from a well-known florist in the neighbourhood of London to collect new plants for him, and in his quest he had made his last unfortunate trip, which had followed one to Carpentaria, to New Guinea. We had heard from him twice, each time with a package of seeds and plants, which we had forwarded to London. Then there was an utter cessation of news. 1 year had become 2, then 3, and it would soon be 4. Quite a little fellow when he started, I had cried with disappointment at being left behind. Now I had grown into a big fellow for my age. I had dreamed incessantly of making the attempt to find my father, and now at last the time had come. I believe I was quite as excited over the proposed journey as Jimmy, but I did not go about throwing a spear at gum trees, neither did I climb the tallest eucalyptus to try if I could see New Guinea from the topmost branches. Moreover, I did not show my delight on coming down, certain of having seen this promised land, by picking out a low horizontal branch and hanging from it by my toes. All of these antics Jimmy did do, and many more, besides worrying me every half hour with, "Come long, time ago find him fader." Of course now I know that it would have been impossible for me to have carried out my plans without the doctor, who was indefatigable, bringing to bear as he did the ripe experience of a man who had been all over the world pretty well before he came to Australia to make a practice, and every day I had from him some useful hint. He was quite as eager as I, but he met all my impatient words with, "Let's do everything necessary first, Joe. Recollect we are going to a far more savage land than this, and where we can renew nothing but our store of food. Don't let's fail through being too hasty, all in good time." But the time did seem so long, for there was a great deal to do. Jimmy, who by the way really bore some peculiar native name that sounded like Wallagurra, was fitted out with a serviceable sailor's suit, of which he was very proud, and never prouder than when he could see it to its best advantage. This was in the wool barn, where, upon every opportunity, the black used to retreat to relieve himself of the unwanted garb, and hang it up against the shingle wall. Then he would show his teeth to the gums and squat down, embrace his knees, and gaze at the clothes. When satisfied with the front he would rise deliberately, go to the wall, turn every article, and have a good look at the other side. When we ran some risks at this time, for our henchman was given his first lessons in the use of a rifle, and for a long time, no matter how the doctor tried, it seemed as if it was impossible for the black to hold the piece in any other direction than pointed straight at one of his friends. By slow degrees, though, he got over it, and wanted lessons in loading and firing more often than his master was prepared to give them. Jimmy had heard the report of a gun hundreds of times, but his experience had never gone so far as holding the piece when it was fired, and when, after being carefully shown how to take aim, he was treated to a blank charge and pulled the trigger. The result was that I threw myself on the ground and shrieked with laughter, while the doctor seated himself upon a stump and held his sides, with the tears rolling down his cheeks. For at the flash and report Jimmy uttered a yell, dropped the rifle, and turned and ran as hard as he could for the barn, never once looking behind him. A couple of minutes were, however, sufficient to let his fear evaporate, and he came back waddy in fist, half shamefaced, half angry, and rubbing his right shoulder the while. "Don't do dat!" he cried fiercely. "Don't do dat! Play trick, Mass Joe! Play trick Jimmy!" "I didn't!" I cried laughing. "Here, see me!" I took the rifle, put in a charge, and fired. "There," I said, reloading. "Now try again." Jimmy had on only his curtailed trousers, into whose waistband he cautiously stuck the waddy, the knob at the end stopping it from falling through, and gingerly taking the rifle once more to show that he was not afraid, he held it loosely against his shoulder and fired again. The gun kicked more than ever, for it was growing foul, and, uttering a yell, Jimmy dashed it down, snatched the waddy from his waistband, and began belabouring the butt of the piece before we could stop him, after which he stood sulkily rubbing his right shoulder, and scowling at the inanimate enemy that had given him a couple of blows. One or two more experiments with the piece, however, taught the black its merits and demerits, to such an extent that he was never so happy as when he was allowed to shoulder the formidable weapon, with which he would have liked to go and fight some native tribe, and his constant demand to me was for me to put in an extra charge, so that he might have what he called a big bang. The doctor took care that we should both be well furnished with every necessary in arms, ammunition, and camp equipments, such as were light and would go into a small space. He got down from Sydney, too, a quantity of showy electro-gilt jewellery and fancy beads, with common knives, pistols, guns, and hatchets for presents, saying to me that a showy present would work our way better with a savage chief than a great deal of fighting, and he proved to be quite right in all he said. Taken altogether we had an excellent outfit for the journey, my mother eagerly placing funds at the doctor's disposal. And then came the question of how we were to get to the great northern island, for as a rule facilities for touching there were not very great. But somehow this proved to be no difficulty, all that we undertook being easily mastered, every obstacle melting away at the first attack. In fact, the journey to New Guinea was like a walk into a trap, wonderfully easy. The difficulty was how to get out again. Perhaps had I known of the dangers we were to encounter, I might have shrunk from the task. I say might, but I hope I should not. Still it was better that I was in ignorance when, with the doctor, I set about making inquiries at the harbour, and soon found a captain who was in habit of trading to the island for shells and trepang, which he afterwards took on to Hong Kong. For a fairly liberal consideration he expressed himself willing to go out of his way and land us where we liked, but he shook his head all the same. "You've cut out your work, youngster," he said, "and I doubt whether you're going to sew it together so as to make a job. I'm going